"What do you make of it all, Godbeer?" he began. "Pretty frightening, isn't it?" Harold said nothing for a moment, but sucked his pipe while he endeavoured to adjust himself to Jim's unexpected cordiality. "Well, I'm not as worried as I was, old man," he said at length. "No, I'm not nearly as worried as I was." Jim was mildly surprised. He would have imagined Harold Godbeer to be the type of man who helped to keep the muddlers in power for so long between the wars, and who was therefore quite incapable of facing up to the liquidation of the British Empire and the collapse of civilization as they knew it. He would have wagered a pound note that throughout the past winter his neighbour had slept serenely on the ramparts of the Maginot Line and was now floundering hopelessly in a welter of terrifying possibilities. Nevertheless, he recognised from Harold's tone that this was not so. "Do you really think they'll have a shot at invasion?" he asked. "No, old chap," replied Harold very levelly. "I certainly don't. I think they'll try hard to make us believe that they're going to, but their nerve will fail them at the last minute. As a matter of fact, I think that chap Hitler is in for one hell of a shock." Jim was impressed by the man's quiet, forceful confidence. It wasn't the brand of confidence he had encountered in pubs and committee rooms recently, rehashes of hastily written leader articles or echoes of the bombast of bewildered politicians. It is a confidence that had obviously grown up inside the man while he was living here, in this avenue, among millions of people almost exactly like him. It was a distillation of centuries of security and national triumph, with its roots deep in Trafalgar and Waterloo, and the assault on the Hindenburg Line. It drew its strength from the dry bones of men like Palmerston and Gladstone and Sir Edward Grey, and its inspiration from the Chartist movement and the Education Act and Lloyd George's campaign against the House of Lords. It was born and belonged here among the small, neatly kept front gardens of the terrace, with their rough cast fronts, little gatepost pillars and looped chains, that seemed at this moment of history to make each little block of brick and slate a fortified castle, manned by a garrison who would count it a privilege to die where they stood, with or without some reserve of ammunition in the back room. Looking at Harold's pale, narrow face in the soft glow of the pipe bowl, Jim's doubts and fears of the last few weeks fell away from him. He felt immensely braced and refreshed by the contact, and intensely curious to hear more. "Go on, Godbeer," he said earnestly. "Tell me why you think that. Please, it's important to me. I don't mind admitting I've been in a fog up to now." Harold smiled into the gathering dusk, vaguely flattered by his neighbour's invitation. "Well, now, I don't pretend to be a strategist, old man," he went on, "but I've always thought of myself as a man of average intelligence, and I like to think about what I read and what I see. Now, here are those two boys of yours. I watched them grow up, and it always fascinated me to note how they always did everything together. Well, you see how it's paid off in the end. Someone turned them loose over there, weaponless, as far as I can see, and with every card stacked against them. Just turned them loose, with the entire countryside in chaos, and what did they do? They just set out for home, using their heads, I imagine, and absolutely refusing to panic. But what struck me about it all, when I talked to them earlier this evening, was that they did it together, the same as they've always done everything together, and it seems to me that this is a bit far-fetched, no doubt, that this is what we've all got to do from now on. We've got to stop nagging at one another and face up to things as a people again, the way we did last time, and I don't doubt every time before that. Once we do that, no one can beat us. We'll get hurt all right, and it wouldn't surprise me if a lot of us didn't live to see the end of it, but plenty will. Enough to put pay to that mob of scoundrels. The point is, if we once do this, if we once show the rest of the world that we're not going to stand for the sort of thing that's been going on long enough over there, then we'll be a sort of front line of our own, and everyone else in the world who thinks like us will come bustling up to lend a hand. When that happens, it can't last very long, can it, old chap? Nobody's going to convince me that there aren't a damn sight more decent people about than there are bullies and perverts who get a kick out of stamping on other people's corns. Does that make sense to you, Carver?" Jim took a deep breath, inhaling the scent of baking grass that blew in from the meadow on the light breeze. He felt better, and much more at peace with himself than at any time since Munich. "It makes a damn sight more sense than anything I read in the paper since the last armistice, Godbeer," he said emphatically. "And if my guess is right, and all the people round here think even roughly as you do, then I'd say you're on a good wicket, old chap, and that little bastard is in for the biggest surprise of his life. I'd better go in now. The twins will be back from the pub. Good night, old man." So that is part of the final chapter. I don't think it's really spoiler in there, but it's part of the final chapter of R.F. Delderfield's The Dreaming Suburb. which I read over the summer and forgot to talk about. I can't believe it, because it was a fantastic read. I only wondered, I thought to myself, did I talk about it? Because I'm currently reading R.F. Field's To Serve Them All My Days, which is also so far brilliant. But what this book is about, it follows the fortunes really of different families that live on this avenue just outside London, or in a suburb, if you like, well, I suppose the dreaming suburb of London. And the three main families are the Carvers, Friths and Frasers. And it's just so wonderful. It all takes place with the end of the First World War in 1918, and follows, starts off with Jim Carver coming back from the war. His wife's just died in the influenza epidemic, and he's got two new babies, twins. And his other children are all around there, and he hasn't seen them for ages, and some of them don't even really know him. And then it kind of just moves about this avenue, going into the different houses and looking at the problems, the crises, the happiness, the wonderful times as well of everybody living within this avenue in this particular suburb. And I just found it magical. Field is such a wonderful writer, and that is also evident in To Serve Them All My Days, which I've just I'm probably just 100 pages or so into it at the moment, but yeah, I completely fell in love with this book. And I think if you want to read a book that explores the lives of ordinary people in interwar England, particularly in and around London, and you want those minute details that kind of just capture, I think he beautifully captures the period and what people went through without being overly depressing. I mean, there are, of course, difficult times throughout the book, as we know all the stuff that goes on in the interwar period, but there's also a strong sense of hope in this book as well, which I just found wonderful. And everybody has their dreams, and of course reality comes up and kind of creates obstacles to people reaching those dreams. But reading this was really just a wonderful experience. It certainly has perhaps maybe even cozy elements to it, but it's got so much depth to it as well. My only criticism, and funny enough, some person put this on Goodreads as well, but it was something I realized from the beginning, is his overuse of people with the name starting with E, which can cause some confusions. So there are Ellen's, Esme's, Elaine's, more and more, Elizabeth's, Edith's. So that can kind of cause a little... Edgar can cause some issues when you're trying to remember who's who, but otherwise it's absolutely fantastic, and I cannot wait to hopefully before the end of the year get round to its sequel that was set up beautifully there in the part of the final chapter I read to you at the beginning, The Avenue Goes to War. So I think that'd be brilliant, and yeah, can't recommend it enough. What a gem, what an absolutely storming read. Go read it. Take care, everybody. Thanks for watching. All the best. Bye bye.